Glad we have people that are out here this evening to try to get some more information on our comprehensive plan. I just wanted to give a little bit of information on the comprehensive plan and the process and how everything works. So we completed our first modern comprehensive plan in 2015, which established long-term visioning for a long-term vision for how the city could grow and develop. That plan has guided many projects that we've seen over the past decade, downtown, riverfront, and broader planning and zoning work. We've always tried to have a community-driven process with public meetings, surveys, stakeholder input that help shape our plan and the priorities throughout the plan. So these documents, these comprehensive plan documents, and I'm sure Christy will get into more information, I'll introduce Christy here in a minute, are meant to be living documents. They're updated as time and as over time as conditions, needs, and opportunities change. So this update follows that same approach. We have public input with surveys, planning commission review, and then the city council will be the final step, and they will do the adoption. So tonight, what you're going to see is the next step in that ongoing effort to align with our city vision, as well as where we are today and where we want to go. So I'm going to take a minute to introduce the Planning Commission members. We have Andrew Carroll, Mayor Jerry Marco, myself, I'm Philip Colson. I'm the president of the Planning Commission. Andrew's the vice president of the Planning Commission. Kate Summers, who's unable to be here this evening. Eric Armstrong, and Dustin Smith, and Susan Evick. So that's our Planning Commission. We've worked hours, and Nancy Brosfrigan is in the audience. She's been on this Planning Commission before, and it's certainly a long process and lots of input going over. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce Christy DeMuth, who is going to tell you what organization she's from, because I will never get it right. But she's going to go through kind of an update and where we are, and then we can try to have some interaction, a little bit of interaction with her, and kind of see where we are. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christy DeMuth, and I'm with WVU, and it's a mouthful, College of Law, Land Use and Sustainable Development Law Clinic. We just like to call ourselves the Land Use Clinic. And we were formed about 15 years ago to help communities throughout West Virginia on land use planning efforts. That's mainly what I work on. I have some other coworkers that do a lot of work in conservation. And as part of our clinic, we have third-year law students that take our clinic for class credit. So I have 3 students with me tonight that are going to help present the comprehensive plan to you all. And I'll let you introduce yourself and tell them where you're from.
Yeah, my name is Alan Parsons. Thank you all so much for having us down. I'm St. Albans, West Virginia, so just right outside of Charleston.
I'm Isaac Mazurski. I'm from Austin, Texas originally, but very glad to be up here in a great state like West Virginia.
I'm Adam Krause. I'm from Pittsburgh, and thanks for having us.
And so they take our class credit their last year of law school, and they help us work on comprehensive plans, zoning ordinances, any land use planning or conservation. So they've done a lot of other projects like deeds and reviewing easements and stuff like that. And so I've been with the clinic for 14 years. I actually helped Elkins on their first comprehensive plan back in 2015. And so I recognize some faces that worked on that, Nancy. And then after we worked on that, we updated the zoning ordinance for the city of Elkins. And that was quite a process because the zoning ordinance at the time was from the 1950s, maybe. So it was a total rewrite that we worked on. And I'll get in a little bit about why we're doing this update here in a second. But just to give a brief overview of what is the comprehensive plan, it's really a process to determine the community's vision and what they aspire to be in the future. So people plan for the future. Your family, you plan where you want to go on vacation, you want to save for retirement. So it also makes sense that a community plans where they want to go in the future, what money they need to save for their key priority projects, and how they want to get there. So the comprehensive plan really is a foundation for that. It's important to note that the comprehensive plan is a policy document. Nothing in this plan will mandate the city do anything. It's just a document to help them get to their goals. And that could change. It's a living, breathing document. They can amend it if something changes and it's necessary. But it's important to note that it's a policy document. And like I said, the first comprehensive plan was adopted back in 2015. So other reasons to develop a comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan really looks at land use and how you want to develop or conserve land in the future. And it's land use is connected to every other aspect of your community. So for instance, transportation. If you have a major transportation project that could bring people into your city, that impacts land use and what kind of new development you could get. It impacts housing. Do you have housing for, new people that want to move into your community? Economic development, parks and recreation. So really that's why it's called comprehensive, because it's all encompassing of aspects in your community. Oftentimes the way we develop our comprehensive plans, we make sure that it's kind of a reality check on the community, to what the issues are in the community. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit of what the public input revealed about some of the key issues in Elkins. It helps the city direct their future investments to the right places. And then lastly, gather public support for priority projects. So the reason that the Elkins is working on this plan now is the West Virginia Code requires comprehensive plans be updated every 10 years. So this is an update to that existing plan, and we actually use that existing plan a lot is the basis. So we weren't really starting over. We used a lot of the baseline data and the framework to update this plan. And honestly, in the last 10 years, a lot has happened in Elkins. And from when I was here in 2015, there's been a lot of great, exciting things happen. So the plan reflects that and updates that information and then looks the next 10 years of what you would like to see happen. Throughout the process, we had 15 planning commission meetings. So as Philip said, a lot of work went into this. Those were all open to the public. In the beginning of the process, we had an online survey, and for that, we received 166 responses. And then we also sent out key surveys to stakeholders that were identified from the Planning Commission. So for instance, economic development organizations, parks and trails organizations, CVB, tourism, fire, police, a lot of the city departments, the school. We had a whole list. I can't remember how many were on there, but we had about 30 people that returned their stakeholder survey. And we asked them, key insights on some of the issues they were facing in their organization. And so from that, we developed a needs assessment. We took all that public input, all the planning commission meetings, and we kind of boiled down what some of the key issues in Elkins are. And it was very similar to the 2015 plan in terms of the overarching issues: public safety, housing, infrastructure, economic development, land use, and technology. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each of the critical issues and identify, what some of those key needs were, and then we're going to talk about what some of the recommendations are to work on those. So, yeah.
Not looking forward there.
Yeah.
So some of the key issues addressed with public safety, and most of these kind of first 4 bullet points were a lot of the top concerns that residents had identified throughout our surveys that we conducted. Those being drug activity and homelessness in the area, and those being both of those issues being exacerbated by limited access to mental health and addiction services. The fire department addressed a need for some repairs to the fire station, to get new equipment, a lack of volunteers that will eventually require additional paid positions to be funded because it's a small pool of volunteers at the fire department. And that would just another need would be the funding for additional paid firefighters. So those are some of the main public safety concerns that were addressed in the surveys.
Housing. Yeah.
So for housing, Elkins, about 60% of the homes are classified as single-family homes, and of the occupied homes, 63% are owner occupied and 37% are rentals. So there's a lack of affordable quality housing. And about 60 of the units are vacant, and most of the vacant homes are homeowner housing scattered throughout the city. And so there's a fee for vacant homes, and each vacant home, people have to pay a fee for it. And the 38% of the housing is built before 1939 and earlier, so only 38 new homes have been built. So that's a problem. There's a need for more housing, and there's also rental registration to promote the health safety of the buildings, and there's inspections for exterior structures, interior structures, light, ventilation goes on. And with the Randolph County Housing Authority, they want to make housing more affordable and accessible, and so they're focusing on workforce development, emergency assistance, and community initiatives. There's multiple projects like Highland Community Builders who build opportunities for housing, workforce development, and supportive services to allow individuals and families to work. And the Highland Community Builders, they own Highland Meadows, which is a planned moderately priced neighborhood and plans to add additional housing units. There's also the Home Ownership Center, and their mission is to strengthen the communities at North Central West Virginia by creating and supporting successful homeowners through lending, credit counseling, financial advising, and home buyer education. There's also the Woodlands Development and Lending, who is involved with housing development, downtown development, community facilities, and community planning and advocacy. There are several projects in Elkins, such as affordable family and senior housing development, rehab of commercial properties, multifamily housing, and the biggest concern so far is the lack of quality housing, the cost of housing, abandoned and dilapidated housing, and the lack of downtown housing. And through the online survey results, it's extremely important. 51.8% of people felt that affordable housing options are extremely important. And for the abandoned and dilapidated buildings, 42.2% felt that was extremely important. And for single family housing, it's highly appropriate at 53.3%. Multifamily housing is also highly appropriate at 31.3%. And so there's a need to accommodate additional demand in the city. We need to either annex new land or focus on infill development within the existing areas. And Elkins had received a $300,000 grant from the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection to aid in the demolition of 11 blighted properties, and 13 additional structures have been identified for demolition once the funds become available. And the Randolph County Housing Authority did a study and revealed the need for more low-income market rate rentals and homes ranging between $200,000 and $250,000. And there's the Woodland Development Group. They built Firefly Commons community to address the lack of senior housing. They built 6 duplexes and 1 4-unit townhouse. And so the demand for senior housing still exists, but there is an opportunity for converting old businesses into housing.
So infrastructure kind of encompasses a lot of different areas, utility infrastructure, pedestrian safety, as well as kind of actual roads and other types of sidewalks type physical infrastructure. Some of the main concerns, that have been identified is wastewater collection pipes. The system was designed to receive both water and rainwater. This can lead in times of high rain to an overload, which the system can adequately handle. So a lot of that is discharged into the Tigard River. There's a loss of raw water storage due to silt filling the Tigard River. That is kind of outside the system, but also a concern going forward as the silt continues to accumulate. There's also a lack of certified operators throughout the entire state. For this, mainly due to a high failure rate on the water certification exam. And while there's nothing directly that the city can do to remedy this, they can help encourage the state organizations to expand their outreach in this area to hopefully remedy the problem. High levels of traffic have been identified as a main concern for this community. It's probably the result of 3 major highway systems running through the town. Specifically, Randolph Avenue to Graham Street was considered a major problem area. Unsafe intersections was another concern. These concerns rose from poor visibility, lack of traffic control signs, and poor street lighting. The condition of streets and sidewalks was also identified as a concern. Again, kind of just relating to the condition of the sidewalks themselves, a lack of bicycle network, and a lack of sidewalks or crosswalks. A lack of parking was also identified. There is a 2024 study that the city commissioned that seems to be ongoing to determine, to get an outside perspective to determine what the actual needs of the city are. There are currently 268 free parking spaces across 6 different parking lots. Public transit, the CRT is the main public transit system in the city. There are 21 different stops on the north route, 22 different stops on the south route. But again, there are some people that have communicated the desire for more stops or more frequent bus stops added where the place would actually stop for pickups. There's also transportation for passengers and pilots coming from the airport. They do about 10 operations per day. However, the actual ability to get a ride from the airport seems to be very limited.
So economic development was another critical issue identified throughout the planning process. And I think mainly Elkins has a lot going for it in terms of economic development, maybe compared to other communities throughout West Virginia. Being the county seat is a huge plus because you have the county offices here. There's also a federal court. It's a hub for medical facilities. Outdoor recreation is increasing, and there's more and more tourism coming from that. You have the industrial parks. The industrial park is expanding, and then you have the rail yard. And these were all issues that actually were addressed back in the 2015 plan. And so I think it's just continuing that economic development and increasing promotion of the city to attract even more visitors into the city so they can see all the assets you have and attracting them into the downtown to spend money and visit. And I think that all kind of goes hand in hand with some of the studies that have been commissioned with the streetscape plan. Just the overall lack of wayfinding signage. Like once you get people downtown, they might not know where to go. So the streetscape plan definitely addressed that. And then I think one of probably the biggest issues in terms of tourism that was brought up is a lack of a brand for the city. So just trying to promote the city, maybe tourism planning, preparing for more tourism if that does occur. And just being inviting, because the city in itself is limited. There's limited room for development. So that limits the ability for the city for tax dollars from businesses unless annexation were to occur. And then in terms of land use, honestly, this was a huge aspect of the 2015 plan because like I had mentioned, we overhauled the zoning ordinance. So in 2015, the land use chapter really focused on that zoning ordinance and what the issues and concerns were with that. So with the update, we really did not have as much of a focus on land use as we did the prior plan. The land use section really focused on recreation. So just improving and expanding the existing city parks. And this also goes a lot into play with the riverfront plan that was established a few years ago, and just trying to fund that with improvements to Glendale and Riverbend parks. Also, there are trail organizations like East that are working on a trail master plan to have mountain bike trails and connecting eventually to the national forest. So we expand upon that as a need, and that also brings in more tourism and also serves the residents as well. Increasing the benefits of the river was brought up as a huge part of that riverfront plan. And then lastly, in terms of land use, there have been some amendments made to the zoning ordinance because issues come up that, when we worked on that ordinance a few years ago that have since come up that have not been addressed, but just making sure that there's no land use conflict. So for instance, the new industrial park, looking at that and maybe having a standalone industrial zone just for that new industrial park, because that area is going to be a little different than the existing industrial zoning in the city. Also looking at some overlay zoning maybe for small businesses in traditional neighborhoods on a limited basis, that would allow some small businesses to perhaps go in the neighborhoods, but with heavy restrictions to protect neighbors. And then also looking at some highway corridor commercial zoning to prepare perhaps for corridor 8 extended. So that was our land use recommendations. And then our last critical issue is a brand new one. And quite honestly, I had not addressed this yet in a comprehensive plan that I've worked on, and I've worked on a lot. So this was new to me too, but something that definitely needs to be talked about is technology. And so how can the city better prepare themselves for the future to address smart technology? So, and this is looking at, obviously the city of Elkins is not like a big metropolis. So some of those cities are doing, major projects with smart city technology. So we had to look at this at more of a lower scale, but what could the city realistically do in the future? And so things we looked at was controlling traffic lights, tracking road conditions, and protecting pedestrians, improving internet efficiency, and then how could smart technology be used for public safety and helping with crime? So from all these critical issues, we worked with the Planning Commission to identify a realistic action plan. And this is really important to identify some key action items because this comprehensive plan should be used to help get grant funding to address some of the major concerns. On a lot of federal grants especially, there's sometimes a question like, does your community have a comprehensive plan? And then you can expand upon and say, yes, this was identified as a priority in our comprehensive plan, and that can strengthen your grant application. So we took a lot of time to make sure that we had the right action items. We didn't want to have 100 action items because that's not realistic for funding and staff capacity for Elkins. So we really tried to boil this down to have some key items that we wanted to address. So I'm going to let students explain some of theirs with their section.
So with regards to public safety, most of these action plan points all go towards improving and expanding public safety infrastructure and resources throughout the city and the surrounding area. And with regards to Corridor H, the city's expecting that the completion of Corridor H is going to bring in a lot of new traffic into the county and the Elkins area, which may place some additional strains on public safety services. So in order to be proactive and to get ahead of some of those increased traffic, recommendation is that the Elkins Police Department and the Fire Department collaborate with the Randolph County Sheriff's Office, Randolph County EMS, and local fire departments to align resources and develop a coordinated response strategy. The police department has also identified the need to establish a detective division within the department, and that would require hiring additional personnel. Another action step would be to ensure that the fire department is fully equipped and supported. Continuing repairs are needed at the fire stations, such as masonry work to the exterior wall, installation of air conditioning, new wiring, new windows, things of that nature. And the city of Elkins should also continue to replace and repair fire equipment as needed. There's outdated tools. Issue with that is they can't be repaired if they break. Rescue tools and additional hardware and software for open rescues needed. And the fire department's also planning to upgrade to phase 2 communications and is currently working to ensure compatibility with that system. And the fire department is currently fully staffed with 3 personnel assigned to each shift. But because of the decline in volunteer participation, there may be additional staffing required in the future. Next step would be to ensure that the fire department is to consider the feasibility of a strategically located public safety substation. So The fire department has determined that a substation of Beverly Pike would improve emergency response times and expand service coverage in that area. And so a project plan and budget should be developed to determine estimated costs and design requirements. The next step would be to explore partnerships with the county regarding fire services. So there's currently 10 volunteer fire departments in the county, but the city of Elkins is currently the only one with a paid staff. And so as a result, it's typically the primary agency that has to respond to calls, especially during the daytime hours. And also the city fire department really holds a lot of the specialized equipment that's not available to the volunteer departments. Like, city has the only hook and ladder truck in the county. So a key concern was to provide fire services beyond the city's primary area, and funding is going to be an issue with that. So because the city's fire fee only covers its designated first due area, and the county has a separate fire fee that supports the volunteer departments, but it could be beneficial to explore a partnership aimed at establishing a unified countywide fire department. And then the last action step is pointed more towards the expansion of public health and wellness services. And that would be to continue the regional task force on addiction, homelessness, and mental health. The action step would be for the task force to continue meeting to identify funding opportunities, establish programs focused on prevention. And the West Virginia First Foundation, the organization that's handling all of the opioid settlement money, is a possible tool to address addiction, homelessness, and mental health issues.
The goal for the housing action plan is to meet the housing needs of the current residents of all economic levels while exploring options for future expansion. And so one of the objective for the action plan is to evaluate options for encouraging housing and infill and higher population density. This is to prioritize funding for demolition of dilapidated properties. And the city should consider including demolition funding as a regular step in the annual budget. And moreover, another action step is to raise partnerships to address unsafe structures and enable the development of high-quality, affordable housing. Therefore, Elkins will pursue partnerships to reduce the cost of removing unsafe structures and enable properties to return to productive use at price points. And another action step is to explore opportunities to support homeownership. And Elkins should explore partnerships with local nonprofits, lenders, and community organizations to expand investments and homeownership in the city limits. Another action step is to explore loan programs that support property owners in making property maintenance and repair improvements. And so Elkins should establish a program to assist residents in funding property improvements, such as removing dead or dying trees alongside sidewalks and minor code violations. And the program can offer low interest loans or matching funds to encourage participation. And from the 2015 comprehensive plan, only 2 of the goals have been met, which was increasing enforcement of building codes and property maintenance ordinances to improve the appearance of the city, and to hire an additional code enforcement officer to improve the appearance of the city, which has been done.
So the current comprehensive plan draft has 10 goals identified under the infrastructure section. The first 4 are relating to public sewer and water. First goal is to expand public water and sewer to underserved areas. For water, this specifically identifies North Randolph Avenue and the Corridor H areas. For sewer, this would be the Georgetown Road and North Randolph Avenue areas. Second goal would be to continue to improve the city's water and sewer system. This focuses mainly on maximizing the retention capabilities in the system, which part of that would involve dredging the Tigard River. As I mentioned before, the silt is accumulating there, and by dredging the river, you would further maximize the capacity. The third goal is to consider a stormwater utility fee. This would provide funding and the ability to maintain a public stormwater system. Typically, these fees are set up to be a flat fee for residential structures and then a percentage fee for commercial structures based on impervious cover. The next goal is to consider a stormwater ordinance. which would provide measures for detention, retention, distribution of stormwater management. And then the next goal is a little bit of an outlier. It's to update the GIS mapping system. Currently, the city does not have a GIS technician employed. They are tough to find, I've heard. And so one of the goals that this plan promotes is a partnership with Region 7 Planning and Development, which they would be able to, there's a potential partnership there that would allow them to help with the updates and management of the GIS systems. The next 5 goals have to deal more with physical infrastructure and are all kind of based in and around, in and around the streetscape master plan that's already been promoted. So the first goal is to implement the streetscape master plan. The second would be to install wayfinding signage, which is a goal under the streetscape master plan. The third is to collaborate with West Virginia DOT to create a safe and cohesive transportation network. Consider various approaches for developing and maintaining sidewalks throughout the city and continue to encourage bicycle-friendly amenities. All of these are covered under the streetscape master plan. And just to give you an example, under phase 1 of that plan, there are striping of lanes, parallel parking, sidewalk replacement, street lighting, improvements at the intersection of 3rd Street and Davis Avenue, and the list continues to go on, but all of these kind of relate back to the first goal of implementing the streetscape master plan, which would then allow the city to proceed with the goals they've kind of already laid out in this area.
So for economic development, we had a few goals, or a goal, provide opportunities for increased economic development with several action items to address those needs I had mentioned earlier. So annexation has, I think was brought up in the 2015 plan and still continues to be one way that the city could increase their tax base. And there were 4 areas identified in the comprehensive plan for potential future annexation, which would be Route 250 South out toward the Walmart corridor, 250 North towards Corridor H, Harrison Avenue in the Wendy's area. And then there, if you look at a map of the city, there's actually 2 donut holes that are completely surrounded by the city, but are not part of the city. And so those would be 2 areas as well that could be part of an annexation opportunity. I know that the state legislature has changed the annexation requirements, so that's a little tougher to do now than it was 10 years ago, but it's still something that we wanted to note as explore methods to spearhead economic development in city limits. So one of the issues that was brought up during the planning process was that lack of branding and a specific person to help with economic development efforts. There was a Main Street program at one time. That's no longer. There is an informal business organization that works together with the downtown businesses. There's no formal entity to help the city promote themselves downtown and even beyond downtown. And so, one thought was, should there be a dedicated staff person at the city to help with economic development efforts? So that is something that was mentioned as a possibility to explore what that would look like, because it's limited with funding and capacity. So how could they do that? Is that something that, maybe would be part-time or would be a full-time position? So exploring that further in the future. The city enacted a TIF district not long ago. And so exploring funding opportunities, the TIF district is to help fund the streetscape plan, but the TIF alone will not fund the streetscape plan. So they'll have to leverage that with other federal grants. So we wanted to make sure that we included that as a priority action item to use the comprehensive plan to help support that. Explore resources to support property investment. So how can the city work with homeowners to improve their properties? Maybe downtown, there are different other cities in West Virginia have explored different solutions to that, whether it be through loans or a grant to help, fix a property storefront or whatnot. So just looking at how maybe that could look at in the future. There are a lot of events that go on in the city and beyond the city, and just making sure there's ongoing support and coordination with those events. And I think that kind of goes back to the lack of a civic economic development person in city limits. And then lastly, this kind of is an outlier. It kind of fits with economic development, but it could be in any of the other section as well. But just a public education campaign to increase awareness and understanding of how local government functions. Because there are certain things city government cannot do. For instance, a lot of the housing issues that we're hearing, the city is limited in what they can do with that, because a lot of that is, private developers and whatnot. And so just reaching out to people, showing them like what the city can and can't do, and then just getting more people involved in city government. So then they'll show up at meetings and maybe run for city council and whatnot, or be on the planning commission. And then lastly, land use, enhance and protect the characteristics of the city through proactive land use planning. So I had mentioned earlier the need to maybe look at a different industrial zone, some highway commercial zoning, and then potentially some traditional neighborhood zoning overlay. So that would just looking at those uses, considering rezoning revisions as necessary. Collaborating with the Historic Landmarks Commission on resources and technical assistance. They're doing a lot to promote the historic resources in the town. And so just making sure the city is collaborating and providing assistance. Implementing the Riverfront Master Plan, because a lot of the recreation elements that are needed are detailed in that Riverfront Master Plan. Continuing to collaborate with Elkins Park and Rec Commission to improve parks and recreation. They completed their stakeholder survey, and in the plan we have some detailed responses from them on what is needed in some of the parks, the existing parks. And then continuing to support organizations and enhance recreational opportunities. So the trail organization comes to mind because they have a lot of future plans. I know they've already completed some of the trails at D&E, but they have a lot that they still want to do. And so just the city continuing to support that organization. And then lastly, partnering with community organizations to host joint cleanup events. So this would help with beautification of the city. And so there's the Make It Shine group. The city has their own community cleanup. D&E college students help clean up. So partnering together to continue those efforts, and also maybe even exploring ways the city could get residents involved, whether it be through a property maintenance competition or some other method to just continue beautification in city limits. And then lastly, the technology goal is to increase organizational efficiency and strengthen service delivery. So improving the city website, which quite honestly, I think the city website is amazing. One of the best, and I work all throughout West Virginia. And so the city's doing a great job with the website and continuing to improve that. I know they want to put more accessible documents to the public on that website and expand that. Exploring that smart city technology that could improve delivery of city services, and then improve the city's data storage, the cloud. I can't say I understand it, but that's needed for a lot of the new technology and making sure the city can store their data properly. So that was a lot of recommendations. Even though we tried to say that we weren't going to have a ton, we still had a decent amount. And so it's really important that this is a 10-year plan. So not every recommendation is going to be a high priority. It can't be. The city is limited in funding and capacity. And so what the Planning Commission did next is we looked at that whole list of action items, and then we prioritized which ones are high. So those are ones that we want the city to implement ASAP. However, it could be a high priority, but it could be, in terms of time frame, a long-term time frame. For instance, implementing the streetscape plan. That could take 10 years to do because there's just so many projects in there and it's a lot of money. So we went through, and these are the priorities of all the lists we went through that we identified as high priorities. And maybe I can show the plan in a little bit to show our little table that we have, because a lot of these might be high, but they could be long-term, they could be midterm, or they could be an immediate project. So ensuring the fire department is fully equipped and supported. Ensuring code requirements for landlords are readily accessible, exploring opportunities to support home ownership, considering a stormwater ordinance. implementing the streetscape master plan, installing wayfinding signage, considering various approaches for development and maintaining sidewalks throughout the city, and evaluating and pursuing strategic annexation opportunities. So those were the ones that were identified as the high priority. And then the other ones were either medium or low. So moving forward, our next steps in this process, we have an open public comment period going on right now. And you can review the draft plan available online. It's on the city's website, and provide comments by Friday, May 8th. And you can provide those, I think, is your information on there, Sutton? Yes. To Sutton. And then the Planning Commission is meeting Thursday, May 14th. That meeting is open to the public as well. And we're going to discuss the draft plan and make any final changes to reflect the public input we've received throughout this process. Then after that, the Planning Commission has to hold an official public hearing, which is different than what we're doing tonight. This is more, you can give feedback and ask me questions. A public hearing is a little more structured, where you just provide comments. And then there'll be a 30-day public notice period. The final draft will be posted on the city website and available at City Hall. And then the Planning Commission will present the comp plan to City Council, and then City Council has to hold a public hearing. So these are all requirements of the West Virginia Code that have to be followed to make sure that the comprehensive plan is adopted properly. So I know that was a lot, and I will welcome any questions that you may have or comments. Yes,
What does TIF stand for?
tax increment financing.
There's a webpage about it.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that, but I didn't even think of it. Nancy?
So, I'm on council. They adopt, so when we have our public comment, public hearing about this with city council, once we have that, and then we vote to adopt this comprehensive plan. And, you all have wonderfully put the priorities together. And, I am, see, if we adopt this comprehensive plan, the city strategic plan should reflect some of the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Is that-
Yeah, I think we actually kind of did it the other way around because the strategic plan was adopted 24.
Right.
We actually reviewed that strategic plan and I think they're pretty well aligned. I don't. Yeah.
That was our goal. Our goal
Yeah.
was to take a look at the strategic plan that had been adopted and then, so we weren't double doing work or, you missed something, we missed something. We were trying to merge them together
Yeah.
as best we
Because
could.
when we did the 2015 plan, I don't think there was a strategic plan at the time. So.
Thank you. And then, just one particular question, with the housing mix being a certain percentage of rentals versus, owner occupied, how does Elkins compare to other towns in West Virginia? Are we pretty, is it something in balance or are we pretty?
What was the percentage
normal?
again? I can't remember.
65% of the homes are classified as single family, and of the occupied homes, 63% are owner occupied and 37% are rentals.
I've seen worse, but I've seen higher. I'm working in a community right now in southern West Virginia that their rental rate is higher, but they also have a major college. So that contributes. I've seen communities over time, that number has also got higher because short-term rentals, Airbnbs and stuff like that have affected that. So I would say you're probably pretty middle of what I've. Yes.
I have a question about, is there anywhere there's a correlation between the density of population and things like stormwater and sewer lines and things like that help build that case? Why that's such a priority for Elkins? So I think of when Elkins was built, we know our infrastructure is old. We didn't have the density of population downtown, particularly that we have today with the number of rentals. I wonder if there's any data that can help put that together for people and illustrate why that creates such a pressing need to address that.
So the stormwater concerns directly came from our stakeholder interview we did with the public sewer department. And I don't know if they have that data.
GIS will have it.
Yeah, so that may be,
I think one thing I think about too, Carol, on that probably is that I think it's like less about density, more about the age of the system, rainfall events, and kind of creating a modern system. That's like the strongest, like to me when I think about like what's the greatest and gives us the greatest sense of exigency to take action on it. It's like modernizing the system so we don't have, combined stormwater and sewer. That like to me is more compelling than density if I were thinking about like what's my thought process on the priority there.
Climate change with the cloudburst that we currently have today, there's not a system in the state that's built to handle the capacity being received right now when we get the cloudburst. So, I mean, that's part of the issue is that the storm and the weather patterns have changed a lot for us. So there's only a certain capacity that can go through the lines, and once they hit that capacity, the river also plays into that with the silt buildup that you had mentioned. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play.
I'm gonna pull the plan
There
up, but I
may be a
don't.
correlation between density and impervious cover too, which
yeah.
Yes.
could lead to excess runoff.
We also have a lot of old, excuse me, old lines that are filled with silt, collapsing. And, I mean, you've got a radius of a line like this, only that much room at the top, it doesn't have silt. Backs up pretty quick with deluge, like you said, the impervious versus impervious percentage that we have. But the big push has been the EPA. There are lots of communities in the country that when the big push for stormwater retention and stormwater fees, individual residences and then your commercial, where you would start out with 5,000 square foot, like a Walmart with 5,000 increments, and then that's how you come about your fee. A lot of people drag their feet waiting for the EPA to get active, and they got active. So now you've got a lot of other folks that are doing the stormwater.
I'm working in a few communities, it's been mandated for them now. So,
And quite frankly, there's water available, or funding available really for water and sewer. There's not a lot of funding for stormwater at this point, so not yet. So we're hoping that changes in the future because this is an issue that's impacting a lot of communities.
Well, also another thing is, like you said, the massive deluge. We had the Harmon flood several years ago, where in 5 hours, they got 7 inches of rain because they got a cell stuck between two ridges, and it blew everything out and flooded the fire department that was supposed to be the emergency response center and the whole 9 yards. And then last year we had the Mineral County, New Creek. They had that major deluge that went into Kaiser. It backed up into the freshwater system and it put so much particulate in, they had to shut it down. And if the water operators hadn't had full tanks, they would have been calling the National Guard or somebody to come help. So, I mean, there's a lot of the strategy that's going on. Also, the governor's asked for the assistance, and also individuals have asked county commissions, et cetera, for the assistance of the early warning systems. Because every one of your offices of emergency management in your county know the culprits of the creeks that fill up really quick. If they can get those early warning units out there and get an extra hour to evacuate people. But also the other element too that a lot of people are talking about is cleaning out these creeks. Got a lot of the timber. That's what flooded Kaiser, was all the wood got up against the bridge and backed it all up. So you've got a lot of fallen trees and stuff that need to be addressed, and I think some folks are starting to look at having that done as well. Matter of getting DEP and EPA signed on. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I'm sorry.
Okay, on another subject, so years ago, prior to 2015, I was more involved with the city. I worked with the DOH on 3 projects that I found them very cooperative and helpful. And I noticed when I read the draft plan online, that it said the DOH is not responding to the city's outreach. I just wondered, how can we help that? What's going on and what do we need to do? Because Randolph Avenue is just, what am I gonna say? It just cuts our city in half and really is not an asset to our community.
Somebody from the city.
Your thoughts on that, Jerry?
No, actually, I do have thoughts on that. I mean, I don't think that's a fair statement that we actually have out there because there's certain projects that we're working on that they've been very cooperative with. But their hands are tied. A lot of times our local district has to depend on Charleston to get back to them. And we're one of 55 counties. So that's the reality of it. So we're not always a top priority when it comes to certain things. Our bridge, our Stevens Avenue Bridge, tremendous working relationship with them on that. Other projects, I can't say they're not responsive. Here, it's just they're waiting to get guidance from above. What I'll say. So we're kind of in the hopper. Is the honest answer on that is that depending on what the priority is at Charleston is where we kind of victim of that, if you will. So, but our local district, they've been amazing to work with. I will say.
Yes.
We have a question.
Okay.
From the Commons. So is Elkins becoming a likeness of a smart city with all these cities throughout the city?
Is it, it's a likeness or?
That's what Commons is.
I would say that's one of the steps in the right direction, but it's also planning for when Quarter H opens up, because when Quarter H opens up, the reality is we're going to have influx of tourism. Fantastic. You're also going to have an influx of crime, which means increased drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and human trafficking. So we're preparing for that now. That's the reality of it.
Any other questions? I wanted to show the plan on the screen, but you guys have all seen it, so I'll come closer to you all. Just so I encourage you, I guess I won't be in that, but I encourage you to look at it online. But the way it's structured is we have the critical issues, 1 through 6 identified. And in each chapter, we go through the background, what we just did tonight, but more detailed, obviously. The background, the needs, and also put in here, each section, we put in the action items. So this is for public safety. This is what was identified in the 2015 plan, and we listed if it was implemented or not implemented, and why or why not. And that was extremely helpful because, some things might have been partially implemented and we wanted to revisit why they weren't fully implemented. Some things were just no longer needed. So that's why we really used the 2015 as the stepping stone. And then at the end is that matrix I talked about, which is here. It details all those action items, and then we have if they're high priority, the time frame, the responsible party, because there are some that are not really the responsible. The Elkins, there's partners that are identified, so the city isn't doing this alone, and then funding sources. So I encourage you to look at that, and I think we have copies. So it seems there's some copies.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I love the format.
It's very
As a
similar to
council
the 2015.
person.
Nobody liked the, how did we have it before?
Horizontal.
Horizontal, so we turned it.
Awful.
So,
Yeah, but
I was a big proponent of it being this way.
yeah.
Little things sometimes.
It helps me as Sarah rules and ordinance. It helps me to figure out, okay, these are some of the priorities and let's pop those up a little higher on our agendas. So I love this, and I love the fact that you rate them, and everything. So thank you so much for all your work. It's fabulous.
Good product. Excellent.
Thank
I
you.
just also, a lot of you don't know, I'm representing for Congressman Riley Moore. And a lot of the things that I've discussed have been because they are on our radar. A lot of the assistance that we have also been working with Jerry and the city on possible funding for some of these situations. And also letters of support to federal agencies, et cetera. So his door is always open, his phone's always on. We're here to assist if possible. So please feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions, I think there are some refreshments back there.
Yeah. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out. I encourage you all, as she mentioned, our 15 planning commission meetings that we have, they are all open to the public. We meet at the Wood Tech Center the second Thursday of the month at the Wood Technology Center. And I also encourage you all to come out to council meetings. It's a very important thing to get involved in the community, get involved in the city. And if you have concerns or comments or want to say, attaboy, it's always a good place to come out and do that. So I want to thank everyone for coming out, and it was a good conversation, good back and forth, and there are refreshments back there. So
And there's online.
what's that?
And there's online.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and there's online.
Yeah, an online question, that was pretty sick.
Yeah.